This is how the Christian right wants to change Canada. Sex ed is a major point of contention, and Doug Ford promised change.
For too long, the Liberals have ignored Ontario parents.
Ontario's new curriculum would have told kids that same-sex marriage is fine, that not everyone is clearly born a boy or a girl, teaching that social conservatives argued didn't respect parents' religious values. As Premier, Ford quickly repealed it. The movement is taking root in other provinces too. In BC, there have been protests over a school program that supports gay, lesbian, and transgender students. The second galvanizing issue is abortion. Ford supports parental consent, this idea that would make it more difficult for young women to get an abortion.
Kids can't even get their tonsils out without the approval of their parents.
The Christian right wants more people like Ford elected, and the PC leadership race in Prince Edward Island is the next battleground. Campaign Life Coalition is telling supporters who to support. And for this year's federal election, type in your postal code and the website will show you the anti-abortion candidates in your neighborhood. The movement is also a strong voice behind Jason Kenney in the upcoming Alberta election. Sex ed and abortion issues divide Canadians. Kenney, Ford, and Scheer seem more comfortable talking about a third big issue for the Christian right, free speech.
When we talk to young people, a policy that is really resonating with young people in this country is the free speech on campus policy.
For the Christian right, the more free speech the better when it comes to abortion and sex ed. The battle for change is on. Joining me now is author and columnist Michael Coren. He used to be part of the conservative Christian right, but now he's more left of center. So Michael, I guess the latest news that we've seen on the Christian right front is this new candidate for Maxime Bernier's party in the BC by-election. She's anti-abortion, she's anti-sex ed, which not quite the platform that you'd expect from a libertarian leader. What does this say about the power of this movement?
Well, I think he says that Bernier is desperate. I don't think he's a real believer in this, but he's embracing the right in all of its manifestations, including social conservatism. Preston Manning, who is an evangelical Christian man, would never, I think, have had such a candidate. He was very careful to make sure the extremes weren't represented. That a party, even a party that may not have any serious representation, that a new party would go for someone with those views. I mean, these debates are meant to be over long ago. That says that let's not claim they're about to achieve power, they're not, but they are now part of the public debate. They're part of the body politic, and they weren't before.
Charles McVitie, Campaign Life Coalition, that's been around, they've been around for decades. They're always a force, but not a major force. What's changed?
Well, I think a new generation has come up. They've seen battles, they've lost pretty much every battle they've fought. Everything they've tried, they've been defeated. And they want to try a new way of approaching, a new strategy. They've looked to the United States, they're more militant, they're more vociferous, they're better trained. Nobody thought Trump would win in the chattering classes, in the political establishment. When he did win, it sent shockwaves, not just to Canada, Britain and Europe too. And so the SOCON right in Canada saw what happened. I mean, this man who actually the March for Life, and he speaks to them, and the Vice President speaks to them, and Supreme Court nominees and new legislation, they can't believe what they're seeing. And they do think that this can be replicated in Canada. I don't think it can. Their frustration is that they have in the Conservative leader a man who is a Conservative Roman Catholic, but is terrified of them.
Andrew Scheer is terrified of the Conservative right?
Oh, I think he's very frightened of them forcing him to take a position.
But I wonder now if we've seen Doug Ford, who had the support of the Christian right. Jason Kenney has the support of the Christian right.
Yeah.
He could be elected in Alberta in the spring. Would, if you have two powerful premiers with that alignment, I mean, could that have an impact on Andrew Scheer? Because he's like Stephen Harper, he's been very careful of speaking to the sort of middle.
Stephen Harper knew how to run a political machine, and he kept these people at a certain distance. If you remember the voting patterns.
Is that going to change now? I mean, as the movement gains power?
This is the question. I don't know. Scheer is not as strong a figure, of course, as Stephen Harper. If you embrace the SOCON right, you get their vote, but it's not a huge vote. If you do embrace them, you lose others. You will lose people. I mean, the red Tory vote, who knows? I mean, that might even go Liberal. But those people who are more, they're fiscally conservative and they're relatively right-wing on some issues, foreign policy maybe, but issues of sexuality and so on, and sex ed and abortion, they're Canadian, more than progressive. They're typically Canadian. He's very worried about losing that vote.
We've talked about the impact of Donald Trump on the growth of this movement here. What about the impact of Justin Trudeau, who's very pro-abortion rights and pro-same-sex marriage and so on? Does that galvanize this group in some way?
There is a visceral hatred of this man that goes way beyond politics. I mean, I would argue Justin Trudeau has governed from a very centrist point of view. He's not particularly radical, and there are many people on the left who are very disappointed in him. But the socially conservative right detest him, and it's personal. It's not just political. I think they see him as symbolizing all that they think is wrong with Canada. So his genuine joy at being at pride parades, which is wonderful. But they are so offended by that. The fact that he really does believe that women's reproductive rights are fundamental values in Canadian society, that is repugnant to them. So they see him as the embodiment, actually, far more than any other Liberal leader, of what is wrong with the country. And if you look at social media and their writings, it's quite shocking and frightening, the sort of things they say about him.
So is the Christian right population growing, or it's just more effective?
It's younger. It used to be a very old movement. There are younger people who are enthused. And I don't say that with any particular relish, but it is true. And they're younger, they're more active, they're more savvy. So I don't think the numbers are greater, but I think the enthusiasm, they're organized on social media, they do understand the world more than they did. So
interesting. Thank you.
Thank you
very much, Michael. Perhaps the newest group trying to rebrand the movement is called Right Now. Alyssa Galobe is the co-founder. She used to work for Campaign Life Coalition, but left her job there a couple of years ago to start this new anti-abortion group. She joins me from Calgary. So, Alyssa, Campaign Life Coalition, some people there, Charles McVety seen as too extreme, almost too anti-gay by some to have any sort of real political power here. Your group focuses clearly on fighting abortion. Why that approach?
Well, you know, especially living in such a diverse country, we understand that pro-lifers come in all shapes and sizes and have all different ethnic backgrounds, are diverse, and so we didn't want to exclude anyone who does hold the pro-life position from being involved in the pro-life movement. And because of that, we've been able to expand more than I've ever seen before, both with regards to supporters and voters, but also with regards to candidates. And that's a very exciting, momentum that we're having. Oftentimes we get branded as being too Christian or too conservative. You know, some people may be surprised to know that there are people within the gay community who are becoming increasingly more pro-life. We do have people who have volunteered for us that come from those communities, which is amazing, and we welcome that as well. And so, like I said, we don't want to be exclusive to anyone, that you don't have to be a certain ethnicity or a certain religious affiliation or even a certain gender to be involved in the pro-life movement, and really want to help women who are facing unplanned pregnancies and children as well.
Some say that Andrew Scheer is terrified of being pushed into a position on abortion. Do you want to push him?
Well, the goal has never been government legislation. The last time there was a piece of government legislation, it did not pass in the House of Commons. So we completely respect Andrew's focus on things that unite the party. But with regards to our pro-life legislative initiatives, we are one of the only democratic countries in the world with no law whatsoever on abortion.
So you do want to push him?
Well, the whole point is to elect pro-life candidates so that they will have the freedom, as Andrew Scheer has repeatedly said, to put forward legislation that's important to them and to have enough people in the House of Commons to be able to vote for it and pass it.
The polls say about 3/4 of Canadians support a woman's right to have a choice, to have access to abortion. How realistic is it to think that you can get enough MPs elected who will support your position?
Well, many of those polls actually miss the question that a lot of people don't actually know what the laws are in Canada. And when they are told that we actually have no law on abortion, that statistic drastically changes. There is a lot of common ground with the majority of Canadians, especially when it comes to late-term abortion, something that is legal in Canada and something that the majority of Canadians disagree with. So I think it's important for the pro-life movement to find that common ground and to push forward initiatives that would reflect public opinion.